The night had been unusually quiet in our neighborhood, the kind of quiet that almost feels staged, as if the world had decided to hold its breath. I was sitting by the living room window, the warm glow of the lamp beside me keeping me company, while I thumbed through a book. My husband, Mark, had gone to bed early after a long day at work. Our children were already asleep upstairs. The stillness was comforting, and for a moment I allowed myself to sink into it. But that stillness didn't last long, and what followed changed everything I thought I knew about the people around me. We had lived in that little cul-de-sac in Ohio for almost 10 years. It was a safe, friendly place where neighbors looked out for one another. Cookouts in the summer, block parties in the fall, Christmas lights competitions in December. Our next-door neighbor, Ryan, had lived alone for the past 3 years after his divorce. He was a kind man, always quick to lend a hand whether it was with shoveling snow or fixing a broken fence. Mark often borrowed tools from him, and we'd invited him over for dinners more times than I could count. He was family in every way except blood. That night, around 11:30, I heard a soft knock at the door. It was strange because hardly anyone visited that late, but I didn't feel alarmed. I pulled back the curtain and saw Ryan standing there, shifting on his feet like he was nervous. He had his hands stuffed deep in the pockets of his jacket, his eyes darting from the porch light to the ground. Something about his stance made my stomach tighten, but I opened the door anyway, careful not to wake the kids. "Hey, Ryan," I whispered, stepping onto the porch so the door wouldn't creak too much. "Everything okay?" He gave a small laugh, the kind that's more to cover nerves than genuine amusement. "Yeah, I'm fine. Sorry for stopping by so late. I couldn't sleep." I leaned against the porch railing, waiting. Ryan wasn't usually one to dance around his words. He was straightforward, a trait I'd always admired in him. But that night, he seemed uncertain, almost fragile, like he was carrying the weight of something heavy he couldn't put down. "Did something happen?" I asked gently. He shook his head, then sighed, glancing up at me with eyes that seemed more serious than I'd ever seen them. I don't know how to say this without sounding completely out of line." I froze a little at his tone. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe he was in financial trouble. Maybe he needed help with something personal. I never expected the words that came next. "Emily," he said softly, "I think I've fallen for you." The words hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore, impossible to clear away. I felt my pulse quicken, my breath catch in my throat. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him, that maybe the quiet night had twisted his words into something they weren't. But his expression told me otherwise. His eyes were steady now, unflinching, as though he'd finally released a truth he'd been holding onto for far too long. I didn't know what to say. My hands gripped the railing so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Ryan," I whispered, barely able to keep my voice steady, "you can't say things like that." "I know," he admitted quickly, running a hand through his hair. "I know you're married to Mark, and I know how wrong this sounds. But I can't help how I feel. I see you every day, the way you care for your family, the way you light up the street just by being kind. You're everything I didn't know I needed until it was too late. I had to tell you." The honesty in his words shook me. This wasn't a drunken confession or a passing thought. This was raw, real, and painful. But at the same time, it was a betrayal of the trust that bound our little neighborhood together, a crack in the foundation of something I had believed was unshakable. I swallowed hard, lowering my voice even more. "Ryan, I love my husband. I love my family. Whatever you're feeling, you have to let it go. This can't happen." He nodded, but his eyes were glistening. "I figured you'd say that. I guess I just wanted you to know. To get it off my chest. It's been eating me alive." I felt torn. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to ease his pain because he had been such a good friend. But another part of me was furious that he had put me in this position, that he had brought this into my home, even if only on the porch at midnight. I took a step back toward the door, needing to end the conversation before it spiraled further. "Ryan, please, you need to go home. Get some rest. Things will look different in the morning." For a moment, he didn't move. The tension between us was unbearable, stretched thin like a wire about to snap. Finally, he nodded again, turning toward his driveway without another word. I closed the door, leaned my back against it, and pressed my hand to my chest, my heart still pounding. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside Mark, staring at the ceiling, the words replaying in my head over and over. By morning, the world outside looked the same, kids riding bikes, neighbors mowing lawns, but nothing felt the same to me. I carried a secret I hadn't asked for, one that threatened the balance of everything I held dear. The following days were tense. Ryan avoided us and I avoided him. Mark noticed, of course. He asked if something had happened, but I brushed it off with excuses about being busy. I didn't want to hurt him with the truth, but hiding it made me feel just as guilty. I started to realize that infidelity isn't always about actions. It can be about thoughts, confessions, feelings that never should have been voiced. Ryan hadn't touched me, but his words had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Weeks passed, and eventually, I couldn't keep it from Mark anymore. One night, after the kids had gone to bed, I told him everything, every detail of Ryan's late-night visit, every word he had said. Mark listened in silence, his jaw tightening, his eyes dark with emotion I couldn't quite read. When I finished, there was a long pause before he finally spoke. "Thank you for telling me," he said quietly. "I know that wasn't easy." I reached for his hand, afraid of what he was thinking. "I would never betray you, Mark. You know that, right?" He squeezed my hand, nodding slowly. "I know, but I need to figure out how to deal with Ryan." In the weeks that followed, things shifted in our neighborhood. Mark had a quiet but firm conversation with Ryan, one I wasn't privy to. After that, Ryan kept his distance. He was still polite, still neighborly, but the easy friendship we once shared was gone. Something invisible but undeniable had fractured, leaving us all more cautious, more guarded. Over time, the sting of that night faded, though it never disappeared completely. I learned something important through the experience, that trust is fragile, and sometimes even those we believe to be closest can surprise us in ways we're not prepared for. I also learned the value of honesty in my marriage. Keeping Ryan's confession a secret, even for a little while, had weighed on me more than I realized. But sharing it with Mark, painful as it was, had strengthened the bond between us. Years later, when I think back to that night, I still feel the chill of the porch air, the tremor in Ryan's voice, the way the world seemed to tilt on its axis in an instant. It was a reminder that life can shock us when we least expect it,